Books have been a source of knowledge since forever, literally forever, dating back to as far as what beliefs you associate with. And with millions of genres and storylines amongst books, there are endless options to choose from. There's fantasy, autobiographies, informational, and with all of these choices, you can most definitely find your perfect match. But what if your options suddenly became limited? What if some of the most revolutionary books began to disappear from our libraries? Although this book in particular isn't seen as revolutionary, Court of Thorns and Roses is one book in the Sarah J. Maas series that has been banned in school libraries. And while this book may include some steamy romance and grotesque violence, there are many highlights and reasons to keep it around. Let me give you a little insight on the book as someone who has read it and analyzed it. A Court of Thorns and Roses is an exciting fantasy book about the story of a human girl and a fairy man, a world split in two by years of conflict, bringing together the most unlikely of soulmates. With the relationship starting with killing and kidnapping, the two didn't exactly get off on the right foot, with the main character being a fairy-hating human girl named Feyre, whose personality includes being rigid, untrusting, and downright negative. She was raised rich, but due to some unfortunate circumstances, her and her family had to now fight for survival. Well, mainly her doing all the fighting. But whatever fate, Feyre ended up killing a friend of the main character, Tamlin, a fairy high lord in charge of an entire territory. The book entails of their rocky relationship and life circumstances, bringing in monsters and cruel enemies, along with raging war between the races and how the main characters overcome such stigma. Overcoming things commonly found in today's society, such as segregation and government structure. With that being said, there are some aversions that come with such an exciting read, enough for the contemplation and eventually the banning of such an insightful book. You're probably thinking, what could possibly be so bad in a book that it would be banned? Well, the simple answer is due to its descriptive language, specifically referring to such topics like sex and violence. With a look into a more fantasy world, aspects being brought in like government and segregation make this not only a fun read, but an informative and eye-opening one as well. With examples of segregation including racist remarks such as beasts, human filth, useless human fool, being used throughout the book, along with a quite shameful quote from Feyre saying, "If he was a fairy, I should be running, yet maybe it would be a favor to the world, and to my village, to myself, to kill him. Putting an arrow through his eye would be no burden, while deciding whether to kill a fairy like wolf." And with America having quite a long history of racism and segregation, seeing such topics in a different world allows the readers to further understand the severity of racism in our own world, even educating them in a way by exaggerating segregation by having the fantasy world split by literal walls to separate the races. Another issue that we're facing in today's age is government structure and conflict, with many being unhappy about America's government. This book brings in an entirely new system involving government, encouraging readers to gain insight on government and other than their own. With the mention of treaties, war, and territories, there are immense similarities to our own governments. The author even goes as far as explaining the fantasy world's government, writing spring, summer, autumn, winter, dawn, day, and night, the 7 courts of Privia, each ruled by a high lord. However, even with such topics being included in the book, the mention of sex and violence are an understandable reason banning a book. But with that being said, the good truly does outweigh the bad, where there is the mention of violence, such as a bleeding male high fae head spiked atop a fountain statue of a great heron flapping its wings. There's also the mention of peace and beauty, of water that flowed over stones, as invitingly smooth violence makes the beauty that much more beautiful. The banning of such descriptive imagination seems like a crime, especially when considering the informational factors, such as segregation, racism, and government. This book shouldn't have even been on the list for books that should be banned. That goes for a lot of books, in fact. Thousands of books across America are being banned as we speak. If you care for books and education, you should join the fight and take a look at the events in a community called Banned Books Week from September 22nd to the 28th to support the freedom to read. Thank you so much for watching.